What really happened with your host, Mike Rivero. You're listening to the Republic Broadcasting Network, where you'll find out what the Fukushima's going on.
And aloha, America. Welcome to our show today. It is Tuesday, March 5th, 2019, getting into the month here, and we've got a lot to talk about today. It's been a very, very busy news day. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. That's 800-313-9443. Mike is in our control room, ready to answer the phone, put you on the air with your comments, questions, and observations. And obviously, for those poor people over in Alabama, they're having a really, really rough time. So far, these tornadoes, they had this monstrous tornado, I guess was like an F4, F5, killed at least 23 people, including 7 members of one family. And the meteorologists are warning there's going to be another blast of severe weather could come through the region in the coming days. So they're having a real hard time. They're using drones to help with the search and rescue, but it apparently is a huge mess. And again, that part of the world gets the most tornadoes because of the confluence of the Gulf of Mexico providing warm moisture and the Rockies sort of caroming off the Arctic flow coming from the north here. So that part of the United States gets most of the tornadoes in the entire world. Not all of them. We had one here a few years ago, hit just down the road, tore up a tree. Okay, over in London, they're launching a counter-terrorism probe. Apparently, these small, improvised, I'm not going to call them explosives, more like pyrotechnic incendiary devices, were found at Heathrow Airport, City Airport, and Waterloo train station. And apparently, they were all in these A4-sized white envelopes, which were apparently primed to burst into flames when opened. So we're going to see what's going on with that. Trump is extending more sanctions and the national emergency with respect to Venezuela. And the situation is still escalating down there. Trump's latest statement says that the situation in Venezuela continues to unusual and extraordinary threat to the national security and foreign policy of the United States. Well, I'm sorry, I'm not buying that Venezuela is a threat to the United States. Okay, that's just complete and utter nonsense here. But Trump is going ahead to continue the national emergency declared in his executive order 13692. All righty. Now, Juan Guaido has returned to Caracas. He flew right into the Caracas airport, and he was met by the ambassadors of the foreign governments backing him. And so that was ambassadors from Germany, France, Spain, Netherlands, and several other countries, which basically met him at the arrival gate to basically huddle around him like a high-profile human shield. And obviously Maduro was not going to do anything involving foreign ambassadors. So that's how they've got him back into the country. Even though he does face a jail term for violating the court-ordered travel ban. Now, Bolton is assuming a strategy on Maduro Guaido leading to regime change. This is coming from Tamir Porras Ponce Leon, a visiting professor at Sciences Po, the University of Political Studies in Paris, who served as deputy foreign minister of Venezuela, and basically saying that any attempt at preventing the safe return of Guaido would meet a strong and significant response from Washington. Well, obviously that did not happen. He's back there. Now, John Bolton is out there and saying basically that the United States is returning to the foreign policy principle of the Monroe Doctrine, which was this policy put in place by President Monroe to simply say, this hemisphere is ours, and we're just going to run it the way that we think it ought to be run, you know, for the benefit of oil companies and PepsiCo and United Fruit and so forth. And Bolton came on out literally saying, this is a direct quote, "We're not afraid to use the word Monroe Doctrine." Actually, John, that's 2 words, just to sort of keep you together on this whole thing. Over in Syria, Israel is delivering more strikes, Apparently, battle tanks of the Israeli Defense Forces shelled positions of the Syrian Arab Army near Kars, Nafal, and Jubata al-Khashab in the province of Quneitra. Local sources said the Israel attack did not inflict casualties and revealed that these SAA positions are actually empty most of the time. So, didn't have some good intelligence on that one. Now, we've been reporting that the United States has been evacuating terrorists from Syria. Apparently, there was a little gold involved in the process. Where are they going? Well, as it turns out, they're being taken to Libya. And one has to wonder why that might be the case. But apparently, according to this article that came out of katon.com, the U.S. is basically taking the terrorists from Syria, moving them to Libya. And, of course, Libya is this huge country at the crossroads of Europe and Africa. So, looks like the U.S. isn't quite done with Libya just yet. All right, we're going to do a shout-out now to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our network. One reason things may be heating up in Libya is that their biggest oil field has resumed production. This is going to be a complication for OPEC because OPEC is trying to trim a global supply glut and get those oil prices heading back up again. But the Sharara oil fields resume production is expected to reach 80,000 barrels a day, according to people with knowledge of the matter who asked not to be identified because they weren't authorized to speak to the media. Regular output will be fully restored in the coming days now that the site has been resecured after a 3-month occupation at the site. So site security has been restored and they're getting back to work. Apparently the shutdown led to $1.8 billion in lost production. So they're getting that back online, which ultimately is going to mean lower prices at the pump for you and I, which that's a good thing. The United States and Russia are still making stink face at each other over Europe, and Russia is saying they may be forced to deploy missiles capable of striking the entire European continent if the United States deploys such weapons in the region, which seems likely because that would be the reason for the United States to pull out of the Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces Treaty. And the Russian ambassador to the U.S., Anatoly Antonov, was speaking at the Stimson Center, said, "We are very much concerned that after the decision of the United States to withdraw from INF, missiles could be deployed on the territory of European allies. We'll be forced to deploy our missiles, and here you will see the whole territory of European countries will be covered." So, we're back in a Cold War. The military-industrial complex is calling the shots. Less money for you, more money for them. And hopefully nobody makes a bad mistake here. Now, Ukraine is coming up on their elections actually very, very soon. And apparently the authorities of Ukraine are now refusing international observers. The Ukrainian elections will be closed off from international observers. Ukraine has basically refused to accredit Germans as observers in the upcoming elections, including many representatives of the political party Die Linke. And basically makes you wonder, well, predict a landslide victory for Poroshenko there. Apparently, Ukraine is really scrambling to find weapons that they can continue to fire at Lugansk and Donetsk, that whole Donbass area. And the story came out on the Lutsk TV channel of Vers, where apparently some of the tanks Ukraine is currently using were retrieved from inside the Chernobyl exclusion zone. In other words, they're radioactive. And that means the crews who are driving those tanks are quite likely to come down with various radiation-induced illnesses. Over in Iraq, despite talk of leaving, mostly on the side of the Iraqis, I might add, the U.S. is going to build 2 new military bases in Iraq, particularly in the province of Al-Anbar, to closely monitor the Tehran, Baghdad, Damascus, Beirut resistance axis. There's a mouthful for you. And to seize the large amount of gas present in this region. This will present a problem for resistance axis forces, and these moves go without the approval of the Iraqi government. All right. Over in Great Britain, Jeremy Corbyn has renewed his call for Britain to cease selling weapons to Israel following that United Nations report last week that the Israel's army's actions against Palestinian protesters in Gaza's Great March of Return could amount to war crimes. And I was seeing a story earlier on Fox where apparently Israel is trying to really fan up tensions along that border. I think they're concerned that when Gaza reaches that 1-year anniversary, the world is going to take extra special note about what's been going on. So Corbyn is saying Britain shouldn't be selling weapons to Israel. Britain's arms makers are saying, no, we got to make a buck here. And, of course, Corbyn is being accused of being an anti-Semite and a Jew hater and all the usual stuff that goes along with not giving Israel what Israel wants here. Now, Benny Gantz, who's the Kahol Lavan chairman and primary opponent to Netanyahu in the upcoming elections, has vowed never to withdraw from the Golan Heights, which was annexed by Israel following the 1967 Six-Day War, adding that he will work to promote American, European Union, and United Nations recognition of Israel's sovereignty over the disputed territory. Well, we already know it's going to be very easy here in the United States. There's already members of Congress that are trying to get a bill pushed on. They're saying, oh yeah, Israel stole it fair and square. You know, we recognize their right to just hang on to it. And of course, Gantz is talking about this, we have to handle these threats to Israel's security on all fronts. There was no threat. Israel simply stole the Golan. And like they have stolen massive amounts of land in all of their wars. In fact, you should take a look at the map of Israel on its creation and look at Israel's map today, and you see how much bigger it is. It's Israel that's trying to drive everybody else into the ocean. Their idea of Middle East peace is we want a piece of that one over there, and we want a piece of that one over there, and we want a piece of that one over there. Anyway, in response to what are being called incendiary balloons, these are balloons that apparently have a candle on them or something. They explode in the air, cause no damage to Israel. Nobody got hurt. No property got damaged. But Israel decided to close the Gaza border, blocking aid transfers as punishment. So occupation forces regularly block access to the Gaza crossings as a means of controlling the Palestinian population. In July, Netanyahu said Kerem Shalom would be closed if kite and balloon launches continued with their activity. Now, this next situation is really going to set off the Mideast. The Federation of the Temple Mount Organizations yesterday called for the Al-Rama Mosque on the Temple Mount to be occupied and turned into a synagogue. And the group is also calling for establishing a Jewish directorate in the area, which is located at one of the entrances of Al-Aqsa Mosque, to oversee the Jewish activities inside Al-Haram al-Sharif. And the calls to turn this mosque into a synagogue came after Palestinians re-entered the Al-Rama Gate area of Al-Aqsa Mosque and performed prayers there for the first time in over 15 years. So according to Arab 48, the Temple Mount organization stressed on the importance of taking measures which lead to changing the identity of Al-Aqsa Mosque in order to guarantee a permanent Jewish presence there, eradicate the Muslim claim to the holy site, and impose Israeli sovereignty over it. One way of doing this, Arab 48 reported, would be to mobilize supporters to storm Al-Aqsa Mosque on Thursday in a bid to break into Al-Rama Gate and seize it. that will really set off tensions in the Mideast. All right, we got a caller on the line, Mo in Florida. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Michael. Thank you for taking my call.
You're welcome.
I guess I along with the subject here, my concern is this, that I think this whole thing with this Omar and this thing is the internet's lit up on this thing with, I would say, 80-90% of people siding with her, even though they don't. Probably half, I'm guessing here, don't like Muslims, but they realize it's, why argue with the truth? You don't kill the messenger. What she said is the truth, exactly what you're saying, and anybody can verify if they have the internet. But my concern is this, that, if this whole, I'd say Jewish hatred, but it's really not about Jewish hatred. It's about, Zionist.
Yes.
And the fact, like everybody really knows, you talk about it, and Israel has nukes, Pakistan has nukes. This thing gets out of control. I don't know if Israel really cares that much because of the Zionists. I think they believe that some kind of a messianic, the rabbis, this Rabbi Shearson, whatever, he's known for her trying to get things hurried up to cause a destruction in the world, and their Messiah is going to come. I mean, that's not my words, Mike. I mean, is this just crazy?
No, there are truly people who are walking around, the Christian Zionists and a bunch of others who are honestly convinced that, they should hurry along the end of the world so that Jesus will come down from the big house and, sit with them and, play a couple of rounds of canasta.
But the Jews also with their Moshiach, they think their Messiah is going to come down. They got the number one, this Rabbi Shearson guy telling Netanyahu to hurry things up, get things going. We need to bring on the Moshiach right away, their Messiah. Yep. So I don't think they care if they have a nuclear war. I think they want to bring it on. That's bone chilling,
Yeah, it is very, very scary. It is very scary. I think, I forget the name of it, but the particular church that Sarah Palin's family goes to up there in Alaska is one of those who think bringing on the end times is their mission.
Wow. I don't know. Where can we go, Mike? I guess New Zealand won't let us buy property. Is there any place to get the heck out of here? These people are crazy.
Well, yeah, they are. And unfortunately, if they get a global world war going, it's not going to matter where you are. Sooner or later, it'll catch up with you. Even down in New Zealand, it'll be like that movie On the Beach.
Yeah, Mike, you're right on. So I'll let you get back to your show and your other callers. I just had to, air this out because it is very scary. Thank you so much.
All right. Well, thank you very much here. I think a reason for the support of Omar, it's not really a question of Israel versus Palestine or the Zionists. I think Americans fundamentally understand this is about freedom of speech because everything that Ilhan Omar said is protected by that First Amendment right of free expression. And for the government to literally be talking about passing laws to limit our speech, that I think is waking Americans up and realizing just how close to dictatorship we are getting. Getting on back into the international news here, the United States has delivered a terminal high altitude air defense missile system, otherwise known as THAAD, to Israel for the very first time. The deployment comes as part of a joint exercise and is aimed to show the U.S. continued commitment to Israel's national security. And these missiles have been deployed basically this last week, and they'll be stationed in the country's south alongside some 200 U.S. military personnel. So everybody's arming up. The U.S. government has awarded arms manufacturer Lockheed Martin a $946 million payment on behalf of Saudi Arabia for an advanced missile defense system. And apparently in November, Saudi and U.S. officials signed the letters of offer and acceptance formalizing plans for Saudi Arabia to purchase the THAAD. We'll be back after these words from our sponsors. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. We're going to go back to the phones to Terry in California. Aloha, Terry. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike, we had an incident down here last weekend where some of the students down in Orange County had a get-together, and the kid that was putting the cups out for drinks, the plastic cups, he arranged them in a little Nazi symbol.
Yeah.
And the other students came up. I don't know if you heard about it, but the other students came up and they laughed and gave a Nazi salute. Somebody took a picture of it, put it on social media, and it just created a firestorm. You would have thought somebody attacked a mosque, you know? And it was on the news, on all the networks, all the local news. And they're going to have all these investigations, and they're going to force the students to apologize. They already did, some of them. And last night they had a meeting, and they had Holocaust survivors there, and they didn't look like it to me. They didn't look like they're old enough. I don't know what their definition of Holocaust survivor is anymore. But anyway, they came out with statements, and somebody said the police were going to get involved. And the statements that came out were from these Jewish groups and the school and the government. The mayor got involved. They condemned anti-Semitic and racist hate speech. Okay, Mike, let me just read a couple of statements made by government officials. You guessed the government. The defense minister said, the next time they go into Lebanon, they're going to hurt a lot of Lebanese civilians. Gantz said the next round on Gaza will be a lot worse than the one before.
Yeah.
The Minister of Education said, never peace plan with the Palestinians. Kill the terrorists. I killed a lot of Arabs. No problem with that. The Minister of Justice said, all Palestinians are the enemy, including the mothers of the marchers. I'm talking about the marchers.
Yeah.
And they should all go, including their homes. They raise snakes, and otherwise, if they don't take down their homes, more snakes will be born and raised. The Deputy Director of Defense said, Palestinians are all beasts. They are all not human. The Minister of Foreign Affairs says, no Palestinians between the Jordan River and the sea. Now, my question to you is, does any of that sound like hate speech to you?
Oh, it sounds like hate speech. Getting on back to that incident with the cups and the Sig Heil and the fury around it, it feels to me like it's a public relations campaign. And we know what's been going on over in France. Is there have been all these hate crime hoaxes and all these so-called anti-Semitism going on, which has been supporting pressure by the Jewish community for Macron to basically pass a law saying that criticism of Israel is anti-Semitism and can be criminalized. And they're pushing for the same thing here. And so I expect we're probably going to see a lot more of this kind of stuff show up, being staged by Israel supporters. To try and say, oh, we've got to all feel sorry for Israel no matter what it's doing to the Palestinians, and we've got to remember the Holocaust. And I'm in agreement with you. It's some of these so-called Holocaust survivors I've seen in the media lately. It's hard to believe they're actually that old. And it wasn't all that long ago where Israel was saying that actually the children of Holocaust survivors were themselves Holocaust survivors because their parents' trauma had tainted their childhood. So maybe that's how they're getting these young people in there. But it's all politics, and it's all propaganda, and it's all bovine excrement.
Yeah, you know what surprised me the most about this whole thing? They interviewed some students in the school, some ones that are like in the lower grades, not the seniors, but talking to them about the incident, and I was surprised how brainwashed they were, just going along with what they're told. And I mean, that's not surprising. They're students, but, about how terrible this was, and, the one way to look at it, that tells me there's already a lot of indoctrination in the school.
Oh, well, that was what Common Core was all about. Don't think for yourself. Just, take what you hear on TV and from your teachers and repeat it. And that's all you need to do to be a proper U.S. citizen. I mean, we've got an article coming up here in which they're trying to say that if you're anti-Zionist, that you're un-American as well. I mean, they're just trying to make all these linkages to try and get people to say, well, I'm an American, therefore I must support Israel. No, there's actually absolutely no link there. Not if Israel is committing war crimes.
Yeah, you know where this thing's going, Mike. It's going from Israel up to the New World Order. Like if you criticize the New World Order, the UN, then it's they'll come up with something like anti-Semitic and it can't be tolerated. And you can't. In the future, you won't be able to even criticize the New World Order. And I know it's going to be a Zionist New World Order.
Okay. All right. Well, listen, thank you for the phone call, Terry. We got to let you go and take a break for commercials, and we'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. Now, South Korea and the United States have agreed to cancel their annual spring joint military exercises in support of Trump's effort to persuade North Korean leader Kim Jong-un to give up his nuclear and ballistic missile arsenals. And we've been hearing rumors about this for a while, but it was officially confirmed over the weekend in the form of a transcript of a phone call between Acting Defense Secretary Patrick Shanahan and his South Korean counterpart, Jang Kyung-do. So they're not going to have those little war games that were making North Korea very nervous. Basically, they're saying the U.S. and South Korean military forces will maintain readiness to defend the South against the North with newly designed command post exercises and revised field training programs, which was probably going to save a lot of money. But you need to keep in mind, one of the gestures that North Korea made following the first summit with Donald Trump is they basically took down all that artillery on their side of the DMZ. You know, it's been sitting up there aiming across the DMZ, and basically they just trucked it all away, put it in storage. So I don't think North Korea is a threat to South Korea. I don't think the Koreas are a threat to each other. And I still think that Moon Jae-in and Kim Jong-un, when Trump isn't around, are still talking about reunification. And apparently, South Korea's soccer leadership has sent a proposal to North Korea to jointly bid for the 2023 Women's World Cup. So that's another symbolic gesture that the Koreas could be getting back together. I think it would be a great idea. I think it would be a great, great idea. However, all of this Sturm und Drang with the United States, it is not drawing North Korea into the warm embrace of the United States. Quite the contrary. Apparently, Kim Jong-un is getting ready to pay a visit to Russia. And Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov has said they haven't agreed on the date, but it is in the near future. And the contacts are going on through diplomatic channels. Alrighty, apparently China has an aircraft called the JF-17 jet fighter. It basically looks a lot like the F-16, only it's a lot less expensive. And apparently Pakistan is going to open up a factory to produce this aircraft. They want to basically fabricate 25 a year. And again, the manufacturers of the F-16 are saying, well, you know, you don't get all the bells and whistles that you get with the F-16. It's just a bare bones aircraft. But you know, one of the things that they learned during Vietnam was that those Russian MiGs, because they didn't have a lot of bells and whistles, they were very maneuverable. And Russia could put up a lot more of them because they were inexpensive. So I think Pakistan may be on the right track here. All right, let's turn to domestic politics. And I should have gotten out my fanfare horns for this one, but Hillary Clinton, on a TV interview, has ruled out running in 2020. This was in an interview with News 12. The room went wild. And basically she said that she's going to be taking an active role working with the candidates in the crowded Democratic field. but she said, I am not running. I'm going to keep on working and speaking and standing up for what I believe. But she's still out there whining about 2016, and her latest scapegoat now is a Supreme Court decision. And she's saying, that gosh darn Supreme Court, they gutted the Voting Rights Act, and it made a really big difference. And that's her latest scapegoat. She lost 2016 because the Republicans gutted the Voting Rights Act. No, Hillary, you lost 2016 because we don't like you. And it would be nice if you would get over this. It's history. Now, interestingly enough, Time magazine has come out with a story saying that if the Mueller report disappoints you, it's actually your fault for believing Trump's false narrative that Mueller had to prove collusion. Well, I'm sorry, Time, that is what Mueller's special counsel was empowered to do, was to prove that there was collusion between Russia and Donald Trump. And it's very obvious at this point the corporate media is sort of bracing leftists for the worst and sort of trying to say, well, it was just no big deal. They're trying to prepare for a soft landing as opposed to a crash landing. Now, somebody has said that March 26th is when the report is going to be delivered, but apparently there have been copies of it already leaked out. So it's floating on out there. And having failed to find anything with the Robert Mueller special counsel, the Democrats are already launching yet another investigation, this one for abuse of power. And they're targeting 81 people and groups including Donald Trump Jr., Eric, Jared Kushner, Roger Stone, Michael Cohen, Hope Hicks, just on and on and on. Basically, they're grabbing everybody inside the president's inner circle. And Trump, of course, is saying it's a political hoax, it's a witch hunt, it's a fishing expedition. And he's absolutely right. That's exactly what it is. They don't have evidence of a crime. They don't even have probable cause. Anyway, Robert Mueller has notified the judge that Roger Stone has posted an Instagram image that could violate the gag order. Now, the judge imposed a strict gag order on Stone, and apparently Stone tweeted out this image of him with the words, "Who Framed Roger Stone?" which was a takeoff on the movie Who Framed Roger Rabbit. And apparently Mueller went to Judge Amy Berman and said that was it. That was a violation of the gag order. Now, Stone is barred from criticizing Mueller's team of prosecutors under the gag imposed February 21st after the longtime Republican operative posted an Instagram image of Jackson's face next to a rifle scope's crosshair. That was a little bit over the line. But the rancor in D.C. is just reaching incredible deals. All right, so let's talk about Ilhan Omar. And the House Democrats are they're out there saying, we have to take action. We have to confront Omar's latest Israel comments. Well, apparently in Congress, the first rule of Israel Club is you don't talk about Israel Club, because that seems to be what Omar has done that they don't like. Because nothing Ilhan Omar said was wrong. It was all factual, and she has a First Amendment right to say it. But apparently the mood in Congress right now is, you can't do that. You can't criticize Israel. Criticize Trump. We're all ganging onto Trump. We'll criticize Trump. Don't you dare say anything bad about Israel. And apparently Omar is out there making an issue about all these members of Congress who seem to have an allegiance to a foreign country. And of course, that's being called an anti-Semitic trope as well here. Ilhan Omar, in this article that came out in Mondo Weiss, I am told I am anti-American if I'm not pro-Israel, and that's problematic. End quote. I absolutely agree. There's no linkage between the two. I'm pro-America. I'm concerned about the actions of Israel's government. And the two are not incompatible. But she's apparently standing strong in the face of all this criticism. And let's see. Another article, again from Mondo Weiss, saying that basically all of these allegations of anti-Semitism are meant to distract everybody from what Ilhan Omar said, which is in turn going to have people looking at what's going on in Israel. What's Israel's government doing? Well, it's apartheid. And we all know apartheid is wrong. We were all united when South Africa was an apartheid state, and that government is now gone. Israel's an apartheid state. That basic law that they just passed codes it right into black and white. And every time you ask about what's going on over there in Gaza, what's going on in Palestine, oh, you're an anti-Semite. You're a Jew hater. Now, over in France, as I mentioned before, there's been a whole string of hate crime hoaxes to support Macron trying to criminalize criticism of the government of Israel. And apparently more than 400 intellectuals, artists, and activists have signed an open letter to Macron that was published back on the 28th of February in the national newspaper Liberation. Let me read you this quote. Mr. President, we are French citizens who respect the laws of the Republic. But if you adopt a law against anti-Zionism, or if you officially adopt an erroneous definition of anti-Semitism that permits outlawing it, please know that we will break this law with our words, our writing, our art, and our acts of solidarity. And if you decide to pursue us, to silence us, even to imprison us for that, well, you can come and get us. Very well said. I think people all over understand this is an attack on our freedom of speech. And if they get away with it, if they carve out an Israel exception to that First Amendment, then it'll be a vaccine exception, then it'll be a GMO exception, then there'll be an exception saying you can't criticize, politicians or the Democrats are going to say, yeah, criticize the president. But that First Amendment is an absolute. There are no exceptions to it. And it's not about art. It's not about scantily clad ladies dancing with a brass pole. It is about our right to criticize the government openly without fear of repercussion. Any government. And you realize how absurd the situation is that they're coming up with in Congress. They basically want to have a country where we're free to criticize the United States government, but it's a crime if we criticize the government of Israel. I mean, how lame can that be? Okay. Looking at Kamala Harris and her political rise out in California, basically Donald Trump was one of her financial backers. And Trump donated a total of $6,000 to Harris' campaign for California Attorney General. His daughter Ivanka gave Harris $2,000 in 2014. The first donation from Trump for $5,000 in September 2011 came months after he had been popping up on cable news promoting a conspiracy theory that President Barack Obama was born in Kenya, not the United States, which has been widely condemned as racist. Now, as long-term readers of this site know, since I live in Oahu, I confirm, yes, Barack Obama was born here. The reason for the second birth certificate was because Barack Obama Sr. was not his biological father. Frank Marshall was. Frank Marshall went to UH Manoa, where he met Obama's mother. He was a pornographer. She was one of his models, and things happen. And when Barack Obama Sr. married Obama's mother, rather than go through that process of an abortion, they just asked for the birth certificate to be reissued. And that actually was a very common thing back there. Very, very common thing. Okay. Here's another one. The Never-Trumpers are they're deranged. They are absolutely deranged in their hate of him. And apparently, they're trying to make an issue over the fact that Trump may have interfered with that AT&T Time Warner deal. And apparently there's an anonymous source that the New Yorker relied on to report that in the summer of 2017, several months before the Department of Justice filed the antitrust lawsuit, Trump allegedly had an Oval Office sit-down with Cohen and then Chief of Staff John Kelly, in which he wanted to make sure the Department of Justice lawsuit seeking to block the merger was filed. And now they're trying to turn that into an impeachable offense. Okay, the new darling of the Democratic Party, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, is in hot water along with her chief of staff. And apparently they were in control of a political action committee that was supporting Ocasio-Cortez during her campaign while she was campaigning. And you're not allowed to do that. And apparently something like $2 million in campaign donations was quietly moved from the campaign to the private companies of her chief of staff. Apparently they wanted to have an off-the-books slush fund, shades of Richard Nixon. But these are major campaign law violations, and they could actually go to jail for that one. So that's heating up here. And apparently Ocasio-Cortez never disclosed to the Federal Election Commission that she and Chakrabarti, who served as her campaign chair, controlled the PAC while it was simultaneously supporting her primary campaign. Former FEC commissioners say the arrangement could lead to multiple campaign finance violations. The group backed a total of 12 Democrats during the 2018 midterms, but Ocasio-Cortez was the only one of those to win the general election. So that is looking very dicey for Alexandria. Her fall from grace could be spectacular. I mean, you know, she was being held up. She's the new darling. She's going to move forward. She's going to run in 2020. I think like Icarus, she's flown too close to the sun here. Former Attorney General Loretta Lynch was testifying before congressional lawmakers in closed-door testimony and reportedly seems to be suffering from amnesia because they were asking her about the approval of the FBI warrant and renewals to spy on Carter Page. She said she couldn't remember the applications, did not remember the details contained in the applications or the circumstances surrounding the conversations. You know, I don't recall. I have no specific recollection. Must be something in the water in Washington, D.C. Everybody's got such poor memories. We'll be right back after these words from our sponsors. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. Now, something is going on over there with former MI6 spy Christopher Steele. And apparently he was planning to give a video appearance at a pro-democracy gathering in Baltimore for a group founded by Trump-hating chess champion Garry Kasparov. And I guess Steele was just going to come on out there with collusion and everything that was in the dossier. But apparently, because of something that Michael Cohen said during his testimony, Steele has now canceled it. And so it's yet another indication that, well, Michael Cohen basically debunked a key claim in the dossier that he traveled to Prague in August of 2016 to meet with Kremlin officials. And I guess Christopher Steele doesn't want to have to deal with being asked, why did you goof up on that? Alrighty, Catherine Austin Fitts is out there saying, follow the money. Unfortunately, we're seeing the government, as it continues to sort of merge with private interests and corporations, they're changing the legal structure of how money is tracked. And we're looking at the Federal Accounting Standards Advisory Board. It's a private group that advises the government, and they're creating a mechanism to control entirely in secret, even from the U.S. president. So the federal government and all the agencies are now permitted to keep secret books, which means you, the taxpayer, are not allowed to know where those taxes are going. Secrecy begets tyranny here. All right, getting into the economic news here. I know that the conventional wisdom on the corporate media is the economy is booming. The the stock market is just soaring up there, and everything's all hunky dory. And we know it is a pile of codswallop. And let's see, all this time, and that is starting to not work as well. The Baltic Dry Index is really down. That tells us manufacturing is down. But there's an article that came out here from shtfplan.com about 18 numbers that show the U.S. economy is in trouble. Farm loan delinquencies just hit the highest level that we have seen in 9 years. U.S. exports declined by $4 billion just during the month of December. JCPenney just announced they'll be closing another 24 stores. We'll be right back after station identification. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. We're talking about the economy. By the way, it's hour number 2. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. So we're going down this list of indicators that tell us what's really going on out there. The economy is not, in fact, booming, at least not in the consumer sector. I imagine the defense contractors are having good times. Victoria's Secret has just announced plans to close 53 stores. Gap has announced it will be closing 230 stores over the next 2 years. Payless Shoes has declared bankruptcy and is closing all 2,100 of their stores. Tesla is also closing all of their physical sales locations. They will now only sell vehicles online. That may be a little tough, and I know that's Carvana's model. But it's one thing to buy a stapler online, and I think for most people, they want to actually get behind the wheel and test drive the car. So I think Tesla's in trouble. Anyway, PepsiCo has started laying off workers and is committed to millions of dollars in severance pay. We already talked about the Baltic Dry Index. It's at the lowest level in more than 2 years. Now, for those of you who don't know what the Baltic Dry Index is, it is a metric of how much raw material is being shipped around the world to manufacturers. These big cargo ships, tankers, bulk carriers, they'll go where the raw materials are, they'll get loaded up, they'll sail over to where the manufacturing is, and they'll offload, and out the other side comes a new refrigerator. And the volume of that shipping is the Baltic Dry Index. And when it goes down, it means that manufacturers are ordering less raw materials because they're getting less orders for whatever it is they manufacture. This is the worst slump for core U.S. factory orders in 3 years. And we just witnessed the largest decline in the Philly Fed Business Index in more than 7 years. In January, sales of existing homes fell 8.9% from a year earlier. That was the third month in a row that saw a decline of at least 8%. This is an absolutely catastrophic trend for the real estate industry. U.S. housing starts were down 11.2% in December compared to November. And compared to a year earlier, home sales in Southern California were down 17% in January. That is a major, major decline. In December, home sales in Sacramento County fell a whopping 22.5% compared to a year earlier. Pending home sales in the United States as a whole have now fallen on a year-over-year basis for 13 months in a row. More than $166 billion in student loan debt is now seriously delinquent. This is an all-time record. And more than 7 million Americans are behind on their auto loan payments. I actually heard another number that said it was 9 million. That's also a new all-time record, and it is far higher than anything that we witnessed during the last recession. So there was no recovery. They told you that. But looking at all of this stuff, you can't say things are getting better, because they aren't. You're being lied to again. All right, let's take a couple of phone calls. Billy in Pennsylvania. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. Hope you're doing well. Thanks for all you do over there, you and Claire.
Thank you.
I just had two things to say. I won't be long. First is, if your average guy like myself can hear on the media about, the El Chapo fund with the wall, where Donald Trump, our president, doesn't have to do the political square dance with the liberals and the neocons and the rest of them, why doesn't he just do that? And second, I wanted your opinion on the Venezuelan situation. I'm hearing on info. I watch you all the time on YouTube, and about the election, and on InfoWars on Alex Jones, he was saying that he has to second guess or second think his situation on the predicament, but then on the same program he'll have another report saying that the election there was totally rigged, and the guy that's in power through the voting system there was did a Clinton thing with it, where he rigged all the ballots and forced people to vote a certain way, and he's saying one thing, and you just don't know what to believe, you know what I mean? So
that's where you learn to be your own best analyst and ask yourself which side is making sense. Now, Maduro's election last year had international observers who all agreed the election was open, honest, and verifiable. Jimmy Carter says the Venezuelan election system is one of the best in the world, and standing in stark contrast to the United States, which has one of the worst. Now, getting on back to the use of El Chapo's wealth to fund the wall, the reason it's not happening is because it's not like El Chapo had all that money just sitting in the closet. His economic empire was spread all over the place, and it's going to take years for all of these assets and properties to be liquidated and the money transferred to the United States. So it's not like the cash is just right there. And that's why Trump is not going with that direction. As far as Venezuela in general, again, every time the United States wants to go into a country, they start cranking up the lies about stolen elections or poison gas or nuclear weapons or, evil tyrant. And I'm a little surprised to see Alex Jones sort of going along with that. But I think he really does harbor ambitions to jump over the line into the corporate media.
Yeah, it's very disappointing. I'm kind of seeing it too. I was watching your show from yesterday, and you mentioned something about we just took Sitco hostage or something like we gave or something. We stole it from Venezuela. What's the inside scoop on that one? I kind of caught the tail end of it. You mentioned that yesterday on your show.
It doesn't ring a bell. I don't know what we... obviously we're trying to steal...
No, that's okay.
Oh, okay. All right, well, listen, Billy, thank you very much for the phone call. We're going to let you go and switch over to Keith Rogers. Aloha, Keith. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Am I there?
You're there.
Just two things, Mike. First, remember China's ZTE, which is tied to their military, is the one that issued all the voting cards and stuff for Venezuela, so there's no way to rig it.
Yeah.
The second thing is, when you're reading off, like I did on Sunday on my show there, the amount of store closures and stuff, you have to think of the amount of people involved at each retail outlet and the potential apartment lost, home foreclosed on, vehicle repossessed.
Yep.
On top of most vehicles are 3 months behind on their payments now. This, and of course, the credit scores, the ratings, they're going to drop because of this. And the corporations don't care.
No, they don't. They just want their money. And corporations, of course, have always been like that. But in a well-governed country, that's what the government is supposed to do, is act as an umpire or a referee, an arbitrator, if you will, between the needs of the general population and corporate greed. In our case, our government has gone completely over to the corporate side. We have entered a period of extreme economic fascism. And yeah, the rich are going to get richer and the poor are going to get poorer until at some point there is a flashpoint that gets crossed and people start getting really angry. And I think when they start losing their homes, they start losing their cars, they start going hungry, I think that's pretty much where the point is going to be.
Yeah, well, it's like when you hear of a corporation that lays off 2,000 or 3,000 people, and you think of all those people that have lost basically everything, and then you hear that the CEO of that corporation gets a $20 million bonus.
Yeah. No, the wealth inequality is way out of control here. And, other countries, you don't see that kind of difference between worker pay and executive pay. The differences are very, very slight. But here in the United States, it's really out of control.
Yeah, I've got that one meme that says back in I think the 70s that the CEO to employee profit was 20 to 1. Now it's 356 or something like that to 1. So it goes to show you how that fascism is taken over. Anyway, you probably got to the caller, so I'll let you go. But thanks, okay?
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to do a shout out now to our on-air affiliates rejoining our network, and we're going to go back to the phones to Joe in Nashville. Aloha, Joe. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. It's great news that Hillary Clinton is not going to run for president.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I can tolerate lefty Democrats. I mean, but she is like the most evil woman probably alive, with her celebration of Gaddafi being killed and all the deaths that have followed her and Bill and the Clintons and Waco. And I mean, I could just name all the just vile crimes that she was part of. And to not have her running is really going to take a lot of pressure off as far as stress, worrying about her getting in to be the president.
Yeah. So
it's a very happy day in my book, just that the possibility of her being president looks like it's over. And that's really good news, because I can have a lot of differences with the Democrats, and we'll see who they put up. But nobody was as vile as that woman or as evil. And the country really should, we escaped by her not being elected. We really, it was miraculous in my view.
Yeah. And
a real gift for the nation. The other thing I wanted to mention is Bernie. I kind of feel bad in a way for the establishment Democrats, because, there are a lot of Democrats that aren't socialists. They're not going along with this radical, climate change and the identity politics. And the party, really when you think about Bernie, he's not a Democrat. He's a socialist. He's an independent, isn't he? I mean, does he even call himself a Democrat as a senator?
Well, he calls himself an independent, but he's going to be running in the Democratic primary in 2020.
And that's kind of, I don't know, if I was a Democrat, I don't think I'd be that fond of him doing that. I'd be like, look, if you're not a Democrat, why are you running for president under our party? I don't know. It's just kind of, okay, I guess it's the way you have to hijack a party to get elected, but at least call yourself a Democrat, right? Don't you think you should do that?
Yeah. At this point, though, I mean, we know he's a socialist. We know he's far left. And I think maybe we rely too much on labels like Republican and Democrat as opposed to actually looking at what the candidates are, what they stand for. And I know that a large part of the country tend to be habitual voters, in that they have been raised Republican and they vote the straight Republican ticket, and that's all they need to do, which I think is a very irresponsible approach to the elections. Anyway, Joe.
I mean, if you want to be Pope, you better be Catholic, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It certainly wouldn't hurt. It wouldn't hurt. All right, Joe, we're going to let you go and switch over to Dustin in New Jersey. Aloha, Dustin. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, but remember, Bernie is damaged goods, because he's all for the Venezuelan overthrow. He's right on board with that. So
yeah.
I remember, Mike, remember in the emails, they had leverage on him, so they either were like blackmailing him or something. And remember that whole thing came out with him and his wife at the university over in Vermont?
Yes.
I remember that. So they got something on him because he's going along with the party line, per se. I wouldn't vote for him. I wouldn't vote for Trump either again. I gave him a chance, and that's all I gave him. One chance. You got one chance with me, man.
Yep.
If you screw over with me after one chance, I ain't going to vote for you again because, fool me once, fool me twice, right? We heard that before. And Mike, on the previous caller, I think that was him about the economy, say with GM, when they're not, if they close and 4,000 people get laid off, but you also got to think about the steel that's not going to be going to build cars at that particular plant. And then
and all the secondary businesses that provide the parts, because they don't fabricate it just from scratch in that factory. They buy the tires from this company, they buy the wheel rims from that, they buy suspension components from another company over there, and they're all impacted. It's a domino effect.
That's exactly, Mike, I was just going to say, domino effect. It's like all these gears are spinning together. When one gear stops and sputters, then the next gear is going to stop and sputter. So we're not doing as well as they claim we are.
No, we definitely are not. The economy's definitely slowing down.
Mike, can I jump? You mentioned the F-21. I think you said Pakistan. I thought it was India because they had a deal with Tata Motors.
Well, it's a Chinese design, but apparently Pakistan is now manufacturing them.
Wow, that's crazy because, remember I mentioned yesterday you got Rafael jets with India and Pakistan with this. So it's all about the business and the money, selling weapons. I mean, I don't know. Did you mention about Trump putting there's some kind of a tariff on India? They had some kind of, because they weren't a real economy at the time per se. So they had this free tariff thing, and Trump removed that now. But I thought that was a bad move right now at this particular time with India and Pakistan, because did you hear about the submarine encounter today?
No, I did not.
Yeah, where Indian sub tried to, it got caught trying to sneak in off the area or whatever, and then there was a drone shot down yesterday, a Pakistani drone by the Su-30, Indian fighter, and then there's 5 violations. Pakistan's been shelling with the artillery in Kashmir again, so it's not over. I just thought it was odd to do these tariff things at this particular time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just, does he even know what's going on over there? That's what I'm wondering. Does he know? What's going on with India and Pakistan in order to do that?
Well, we have heard reports that basically Trump himself does not like to read the detailed reports that are coming to his desk, that he'll just have members of his staff read them and then summarize them to him briefly, which gives those staffers the ability to impose their own particular spin and agenda on it. But there have been more than a few occasions where I look at what Trump is saying and doing, and I come away with a distinct impression that he doesn't really have a grasp on what's going on. And that's a very, very dangerous situation.
It is. And real quick, Mike, did you see, if you watch RT, Rick Sanchez, he had the thing with Huawei since Trump with the Huawei thing. They said their sales are up now because everybody knows about Huawei, and they didn't know about them before, because I didn't know about them before.
No, I didn't know about them either. And, I'm sure the fact that the NSA can't read their encryption, is probably very popular among us technoids.
And isn't it amazing? They have something in Texas, their headquarters in the U.S. is in Texas, but they're not allowed to sell phones here. Now, is that capitalism?
That's protectionism.
Exactly. But Apple sells phones to China, right? They make them in China.
Yeah, well, these are why these trade deals are so complex. I think Huawei phones are sold in the U.S., but they have to put somebody else's brand name on them. Or something.
Okay.
Yeah, that goes on an awful lot. Anyway, Dustin, thanks an awful lot. We're going to let you go, and the phone lines are now open. Apparently over in China, their largest property developer has announced they're going to sell all their homes starting immediately at a 10% discount. And so it looks like China's economy is starting to stumble. And of course, with all of this economic globalism, one nation stumbles, everybody will get the bruises from that one. Story coming out of Russia Today. Trump to terminate India trade benefits, demands equitable and reasonable access to its markets. And apparently, Trump is terminating the designation of India as a beneficiary developing country under the Generalized System of Preferences program that has now been canceled. And he wants access to the markets of India. That may be a little tricky when it comes to the GMO because of what happened in India with that BT corn. Got to take a break for commercials, and we'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. And for those of you who want to support Republic Broadcasting, the postal address to send a check, money order, or if you prefer anonymity, cash, is Republic Broadcasting Network, 2251 Double Creek Drive, number 302, Round Rock, Texas, 78664. The phone number where you can make a debit or credit card donation or pledge to be a recurring subscriber is 800-724-2719, extension 1 during business hours, extension 3 at all other times. Alrighty, getting on back to the economic news. Apparently, Purdue Pharmaceuticals, the makers of OxyContin, is looking at going into bankruptcy to basically deal with the liabilities from roughly 2,000 lawsuits alleging that the drug maker contributed to the deadly opioid crisis sweeping the United States. And the move shows how Purdue and its wealthy owners, the Sackler family, are under pressure to respond to mounting litigation, accusing the company of misleading doctors and patients about risks associated with prolonged use of its prescription opioids. Now, when OxyContin first came on out, it was always supposed to be temporary. You know, you banged up your elbow, here's some OxyContin, a week's worth, and then after that you were off. And Purdue has been pushing doctors to say, no, use it for chronic pain management, and gets people hooked, gets them addicted, and there have been a lot of opioid deaths. So, yeah, I'd like to see them slapped upside of the head here. All right, let's take another phone call. John in Tennessee, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, can you hear me, Mike?
I hear you.
Oh, okay, sorry, I didn't hear it click over. No, this Omar situation, I find it really interesting. Since the ascendancy of Ron Paul back in 2008 all the way through the 2016 election and the quote-unquote alt-right movement, Israel has been getting a black eye for these wars the entire time. And how convenient they have this one little lady, Omar, from Minnesota, and now, while one hand's over here waving, Donald Trump's under attack by the Democrats are trying to take down our president. Oh, and they're anti-Semites, too. They're Nazis. They're calling the Democrats Nazis, which is funny. Now they're going to pass the legislation to shut up all criticism of Israel.
Somebody's going to have to take that to the Supreme Court. First of all, the idea that it's perfectly legal to criticize the U.S. government, but we can't criticize Israel in the United States, that's absurd on the face of it. And it is an attack on our First Amendment right to freedom of speech. And so there are lawsuits that are already being started up by companies who were told that they would have to pledge a loyalty oath to Israel in order to get state government contracts. This is going to wind up at the Supreme Court.
That was the same about flood relief in Texas. Remember that?
Yeah, I remember that one. Yeah.
Right. But and if they're going to crank something up against Iran, this country's going to be in an uproar. We've all said no more Middle East wars for 8 years. And they're going to shut us all up before they start it up.
Well, again, with all these laws that are being passed all over the place here, first of all, I don't think it's a legitimate exercise of a state government to basically tell us how we should feel about a foreign government. I think that's ridiculous on the face of it. But it's starting to go to court. It's starting to make its way through the court system. At some point, it's going to go all the way to the Supreme Court. And I can't imagine that the current court, which is conservative, is not going to stand there and say freedom of speech is an absolute.
Well, you wonder how far they could take it when they just say, "Oh, you're anti-Semitic." But did you know there's a tenured professor at Northwestern that's a quote-unquote Holocaust denier? They can't. I mean, the guy just has the numbers. Like, he studied the Nuremberg trial.
Yep.
But Northwestern can't get rid of him. But yeah, I mean, I want to go read some of what that guy is, because that's really what it's about. You know, the Holocaust is a money-making operation, and if people just study the Nuremberg trials and the history, they'll find out the numbers don't add up.
No.
So,
if you look at it, the whole story doesn't. I mean, so much of it has already been discredited. Remember those bars of soap that they were parading around and even burying with funerals, saying that was made out of the fat of the Jewish prisoners, and then somebody did a DNA test and found it was ordinary pig fat, and not much of it because it was a military soap.
And the fact that they mandate it in public school education, they set aside 2 weeks or whatever for Holocaust. I mean, it's gone over the top.
Yeah, it is. They're desperately trying to maintain that illusion for political purposes and for fundraising and so forth. Again, just looking at the way Israel supporters treat anybody who asks a question, it's very obvious they know they're hiding a tremendous secret.
Right, and it's a First Amendment issue, and that's where we have to hit it. Because you cannot tell me what to think or what to believe or what to believe. Because I study original sources of history. I won't find things written after a certain year. So, okay, thanks, Mike.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to let you go here. We're going to take another break for commercials, and we'll be back with another phone call after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. We're going to go back to the phones here to Art off the grid. Aloha, Art. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. You were talking about opioids there, and 2017, I spent a year trying to help a opiate addict. Boy, I tell you what, you want to talk about a nightmare. That is not an easy thing to do.
Yeah.
Trying to help them and help them manage their methadone. And the problem with methadone is that it is the most addictive opiate out there.
Yeah.
And basically all they're doing when they put you on this, you have to go to the methadone clinic every week or whatever it is. And basically what they've done is they've taken you away from buying your drugs illegally, and the state becomes your drug dealer, and it's pretty messed up. And what's really got me concerned is back during December, I had triple surgery done about 2 weeks before Christmas. I had triple surgery done on my right shoulder for some severe issues that were going on there. And now I've just recently got the reports on my MRIs, which show massive buildup within the spinal column itself.
Oh, boy.
Which is crushing nerves. Literally crushing the entire main nerve that runs down there from L4, L5, S1 all the way down, and every sciatic nerve is being crushed by this buildup, and they're talking surgery. And I'll tell you what, man, I am really worried because I know that the first thing they're going to want to do is they're going to want to start shoving them opioids at me. And, dude, I'm telling you what, dude, I'm not the kind of man that rattles easy. Dude, I'm scared. Because I'm worried that they're going to want to start pumping these things on me so hard that I will become addictive. And that's a terrifying thought when I've already seen what happens to addicts.
Yeah.
And now I'm facing surgery that's going to require severe painkillers that could result in a massive addiction. This is a frightening thought for me. And I'm not exactly sure what I'm going to do here. Any advice?
Well, I'm not a doctor. I played one in a movie once. My understanding is that from my own experience, is the less of the opioids you take, the less addictive they are. But you want to take just enough to deal with the pain, and not enough to where you feel the buzz. It's when you're taking enough to feel the buzz that you're most at risk for addiction. As far as your spinal issues, boy, it makes what Claire went through look like just a minor inconvenience.
Yeah, well, I tell you what, it's got me really worried. I remember after my shoulder surgery back in December, they had me on oxycodone, and it was a low dosage. I didn't feel enough to get buzzed. It helped with the pain, but because of the type of surgery they're talking, it's incredibly invasive and risk of paralyzation.
Yeah.
But really, really scary. It's like, if anybody out there has got any suggestions of how to manage pain without the opioids, I'd be willing to give out my email address and have people contact me with any suggestions they might have, because this has really got me worried.
Well, I tell you what, they can send it in, and I'll make a point of posting it to the What Really Happened website for everybody's benefit. But again, I wish you get well. And yes, spinal surgery is very, very risky. When I was still with my first wife, and she was dealing with a ruptured disc, and she was saying she wanted to go through the surgery, and everybody said, no, the risk of nerve damage is too great. And obviously, you don't need me to tell you this, but I'm going to tell you anyway, please get a second opinion on all of this.
Well, I'm being referred to a specialist, and I go in on the 14th to talk to a specialist. So I've gone from my regular doctor to a semi-specialist to the Augusta Pain Center, and now I'm being referred to a fourth individual who specializes in this kind of stuff. So this has been an ongoing process over about a year and a half now, as we've been tracking this to try to figure out what's going on and what to do. So I appreciate that. Definitely, I mean, if people send in something and you can get it posted on the website, that would be a big help, because I'm really, really looking for any kind of alternative beyond the opioids. Anyway, thanks, Mike. Appreciate it.
Have you thought of Kratom?
Kratom, never heard of it.
Kratom, well, you can get it in the health food stores. The government is making noises to start scheduling it, because if you buy it in bulk and you get the capsules, you can make up a year's worth for like about $40, and of course the pharmaceutical companies don't like that. So the FDA is making noises about shutting down Kratom, but if you can still get it, that might be something that you might find useful.
How do you spell that?
Kratom.
Ton or M?
M is in Michael.
Okay, I'll look that up. In the meantime, best wishes to Lady Claire, and hope she gets well soon.
Yeah, she's doing a lot better. Over the last 6 weeks, there's just been a marked improvement. Anyway, thanks an awful lot for the phone call. We're going to let you go and switch over to Raleigh in Minnesota. Aloha, Raleigh. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Michael. Thanks for taking my call. That caller that just called in before, I take Kratom every day. I take creatine, too. I was about to say that. But I like to take Mondang. That's what I would recommend for anybody that tries Kratom for the first time. Different strains actually do different things. This one's very good for pain. It makes you very proactive as well.
Which strain is that again?
Mondang. It's spelled Maendga. That's what I would recommend anybody who's part of the Michael Rivero Army, because, for example, Red Bali makes you stupid. Like, if you want to chill out and kind of party, you would take Red Bali. The green Malay, I don't recommend anybody over 30 to take, because you have to, like, seriously, like, you got to take it on an empty stomach. And, yeah, I just don't recommend it for older people. Also, I was going to say something else, but it actually slips my mind. Did you ever try Kratom yourself, Michael?
Yeah, and before we could get Claire into medical care, that was the only way we had of helping her get through the pain.
Yeah, I definitely recommend the Mondang. It helps me out, and it makes me more an efficient person to get through my days. I sleep generally like 4 hours a day because of work and watching my kids. Me and my wife don't do babysitting, and we don't send our children to daycare. So it's like, tag, you go to work, and when I come home, tag, you go back to work, sort of thing. And so, like, I had a problem with energy drinks, so Kratom really does help, and it helps me with my research as well.
Yeah.
Michael, this tit for tat between India and Pakistan, that really isn't recent, because of the border is almost a DMV zone, in between Pakistan and India. I saw the rocks being thrown in the movie Gandhi, for an example, about the built-up hostility that's century in the making between the Muslims and the Hindus, and I don't have a favorite in between those guys. I wish them the best, but what makes me stand on my my back hair stand is that they're both nuclearly armed, and that gives me nightmares.
Yeah,
and it's over a place called Kashmir, which most Americans don't know anything about it. Kashmir, probably think it's just a Led Zeppelin song. They could care less about it, but that is the most militarized zone there is Kashmir itself. There is 70,000 Indian troops there, and they don't want to give an edge to Pakistan, and they don't want to give independence to Kashmir to have their own state. And, the people desperately want that, and it has to do with the Himalayan mountains.
Yeah.
If Pakistan gets into Kashmir, they have a launching pad to essentially make an attack, on India itself. And the people that are instigating it, I've read what Robert Fish had to say about the Indian-Pakistan conflict, about Israel being an instigator. And I wonder, like, about the militant and the tribal side of Pakistan itself, like, who's funding them? Is this kind of a CIA, Mossad type of front thing? On Wikipedia, it does say that ISS is definitely involved, but there's probably hidden forces, and I can't see anything to gain from funding people that could create a possible end of civilization sort of scenario.
Well, for those who are curious, one of our listeners sent in that story about how the Pakistan Navy foils alleged attempt by an Indian submarine to enter Pakistan's waters, and that's now up on the main page at What Really Happened. And that's a very troubling development. I was kind of hoping things were going to calm on down, but apparently they're trading artillery fire across the line of control, and now there's this situation. Although looking at the surveillance video, it doesn't look like the Indian submarine was all that upset that they got detected. All right, well, listen, Raleigh, I'm going to let you go. We got calls piling up here. Tom in Utah, aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. The caller before with the back grief. I tuned in just moments ago and just got the tail end when you were talking with him.
Yeah.
I don't know if anybody recommended he do a little bit of research on CBD.
Nobody had yet, but I think the problem is that CBD, I mean, you put that on topically on your skin. You don't, like, ingest it, do you?
Well, there's multiple ways to...
okay, because where he's getting the pain is, deep inside his skeletal system.
Fine. Yeah. Well, if you don't mind, he could call me, and I can take him through the etiology. I worked in pathology.
I don't want anybody giving out their phone numbers or email addresses over the air because it's an invitation to get all kinds of harassment. But I'm sure that Art is still listening, and he can do the research for CBD himself. Okay.
If he wants to, I think, is it Mike at the board? I think Mike has my number.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. Tell him to call Mike, and then we can get together, and I can take him through the etiology.
All right. Fabulous. All right. Thanks an awful lot for the phone call. We're going to switch over to Stephen in Oregon. Aloha, Stephen. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, a little advice for Art. I had a failed back surgery, and you need to be very careful with back surgery. And the most important thing is informed consent. So be informed as much as you can. There are actually 2 informed consent forms. There's one for just people who don't ask the right questions, and then there's another one, more detailed informed consent form, okay?
Yeah.
So you need to ask for both consent forms, okay? And I have to let them know that there is a lifelong painful disease you can get from back surgery. It's called arachnoiditis. Okay?
Okay.
And that is from complications of bleeding after surgery. Okay?
Okay.
And it's absolutely horrible. Okay? And I'll tell them to stay away from the steroid. The steroids can cause this same disease, arachnoiditis.
Okay.
It goes in your life. And basically just be informed before you consent, because that's the most important thing, is be informed.
Okay, well, I'm looking at it right here, where apparently it's an inflammation of the membranes that surround and protect the spinal cord.
Yeah, and it also can calcify inside your spinal canal and cause calcification, and it is the worst thing you could ever have. I'll let you know. And opioids are the only thing that will help. So you have to really be careful.
Okay, well, sorry to hear about your back issues here, and I hope they get better. But as you said, this is a chronic condition here. So we're going to let you go here, and we're going to switch over to Jeff in Colorado. Aloha, Jeff. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. I was just listening to Art off the grid there, and he was saying that he's so terrified of getting hooked up on opioids and stuff. You should move up here to Colorado, man, because they won't give you opiates for anything.
Okay.
I broke 4 ribs 11 months ago, and they told me to take an aspirin.
For broken ribs?
Yeah. I could do nothing to get comfortable. I couldn't sleep. It hurt just to move. And they go, take an aspirin or a Tylenol, Up here, man, they're so terrified of giving you opiates. I don't know why.
Well,
you could break your leg. You could chop your leg off, and they won't give it to you.
Well, Colorado is showing, I think, an appropriate level of restraint, because in a lot of other states, I mean, the reason Purdue is being sued is because they were literally going on out and incentivizing doctors to write these, major prescriptions. Once that came on out, that's when the lawsuit started, because a lot of people did get hooked.
I was never aware of an opiate. A buddy of mine broke his back. They gave him opiates for quite a while, and it was his only relief. And now all of a sudden they're telling him, well, we're going to wean you off of them, and we're going to send you to a pain specialist. And all them pain specialists is go, well, you got to get off of these opiates,
Yeah.
But that was his only relief. He can't even get out of bed without, some kind of pain relief.
I know pain can be very, very debilitating. I sometimes wonder just how it is that Claire made it through this last year. I mean, she's gutsy. What can I tell you? Anyway, listen, Jeff, I'm going to let you go here. And
hey, thanks, man.
You got it. Take care of yourself. Feel better. And we're going to take a break for commercials, and we'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. We're talking about the economic news here. And all of a sudden, we're seeing these bizarre linkages. Like earlier in the show, we were talking about how they're trying to sell this idea that, if you're anti-Israel, then you're anti-American. And now we have this Labor member of Parliament, McDonough, who's out there saying to be anti-capitalist is to be anti-Semitic. So they're really out there on some of these things. All right. Apparently, Theresa May flew to Brussels yesterday, 2 days ago, to seal the final deal with Juncker. But furious Brexiteers have said the tight timetable does not leave them enough time to look over what is being agreed to. And they're concerned that Theresa May try and pull a fast one here. All righty. Over in Great Britain, they have these sex gangs. The corporate media calls them the Asian grooming gangs. But apparently this particular rape gang behaved in a manner, well, it wasn't very nice. They view infidel women as inferiors, and if a woman is not covered up, this in itself is justifiable reason to abuse her. Comes right out of the Quran. And apparently this Asian sex gang is in court, and their supporters are threatening to grab, abduct, and rape 2 female prosecutors who are trying them. So how's that open borders thing working out for you? All right, the House has passed the Universal Background Checks bill. They're calling it the most significant piece of gun control legislation in more than 2 decades. The bill passed by a vote of 240 to 190, and this bill will require background checks on all gun sales in the United States. Currently, only licensed firearm dealers have to perform background checks, and unlicensed dealers, such as those at gun shows, can sell a gun without going through the National Instant Criminal Background Check. They want to change that. They want even private party sales to go through the background check. I got to tell you, I am not all that bothered by this. There are people out there who shouldn't have guns. Unfortunately, the system doesn't work. That one that we had where the guy went in and shot up his workplace, he wasn't supposed to have a gun. He was a convicted felon. Interestingly enough, there's a new trend in firearms ownership. And apparently it is ladies. Women are the fastest growing population of gun owners, and gun manufacturers and accessory manufacturers are starting to cater to them with things like pink holsters, pastel handles. Alrighty, we're going to take a break for station identification, and we'll be back after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, hour number 3. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. And I've gotten a few emails from people saying that there are other painkillers besides opiates, and if you're really concerned about the addiction, just ask your doctor, what have you got that will help me deal with the pain that is non-habit forming? Of course, ultimately, if abused, they're all habit forming. But I think right now a lot of people are very scared because of all the deaths that have resulted from this opioid abuse. So let's see, hour number 3. Let's talk about human-caused global warming a bit. And I think I mentioned this yesterday. There was a saying when I was growing up, March comes in like a lion and goes out like a lamb, and I certainly hope that's true because it has certainly come in like a lion with all those tornadoes they've had over there in the Midwest. Out in Denver, they've had their coldest early March in 60 years. And the temperature in Minneapolis went down to 13 degrees below zero. That is very cold. Over in Delaware, they've got all kinds of traffic problems from heavy, wet snow. It's the Delaware and the Lehigh valleys. And they're saying, yeah, it's another round of winter weather as we start the month of March here. And apparently salt trucks were out there coating the roads in Allentown, just trying to deal with it here. Another blast of frigid temperatures has moved into the New York area that will bring some of the coldest air of the winter over the next few days. So if you're in that part of the country, bundle up. It's actually been unusually cool here in Hawaii, and I know we have no right to complain. We're here in Hawaii, we're in the tropics and everything. But for people who have lived here for a while, which we have, we're used to the warmer weather, and it's actually been getting very, very cool at night. Over at the Dublin airport, There are long delays. Apparently, they've had major snow in the Midlands and east of the country. Drivers are being urged to take extra care on the roads with frost, fog, and lying snow remaining in many areas. Okay, over at Fox 56, this is in Pennsylvania. Snow returned throughout Pennsylvania Sunday, making getting around a bit tricky. It started to accumulate a little bit more. Speed limits have been reduced to 45 miles per hour, and so forth and so on. Over in Brockton, apparently they had to dig themselves out from under 14 inches of snow yesterday, the process of which they were forced to tow 64 cars. They're calling it the heaviest snowstorm of the year. This is when we're supposed to be starting to get into, to that kind of spring-like thing here. So let's get on back here to the Green New Deal, which Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is promoting. And one of the targets of the Green New Deal is meat. They're coming after those hamburgers, folks. And it's actually been part of the whole global warming agenda to get us all eating vegetarian, which, by the way, if you eat only vegetarian, you can get sick. We evolved to eat a balanced diet, which does include meat. But those cows, they're pumping out, greenhouse gases, and we've got to stop that here. But this Green New Deal, it's like some of the other things that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has come up with, like the Medicare for All. Who's going to pay for this? Oh, we'll just pay for it. Really? With what? Oh, we'll just pay for it. No idea. Another article on the same topic, this one out of the BBC. Do Democrats want to take away Americans' hamburgers? They start out saying, is nothing sacred? So apparently this ground beef patty is now ammunition in this latest cultural food fight. And all to fight human-caused global warming. Doesn't look very warm around here. Apparently, almost every coal-fired power plant in the U.S. is contaminating groundwater with unsafe levels of toxic pollution. And this is the result of the first comprehensive survey of the consequences of coal ash waste disposal. Now, when you burn coal, it leaves behind coal ash. And coal ash is very toxic. And you got to figure out, what are you going to do with that? So apparently, let's see, San Miguel Power Plant, Christine, Texas, lithium 100 times over the safe level, cadmium 100 times over the safe level, at least 10 other pollutants. Duke's Energy, Allen Steam Station, Belmont, 12 miles west of Charlotte, cobalt at 500 times the recommended safe level. And it goes on and on from there. All right, we're going to do a shout out now to our honor affiliates who are just now rejoining our network. And, it is an issue. We do have to take care of the environment. The problem is that much of what passes for environmentalism is political opportunism. And again, global warming is a good example. They weren't really about saving the world. They were about making money and getting political power over you. Google's in the news a lot these days. Apparently, Google came on out admitting that these days they actually pay men less than women doing the same job. I'm sure the feminists are out there saying, it's about time. And apparently, Google employees have uncovered that there's ongoing work on the censored China search engine. And a lot of Google employees are very, very concerned about that. And I think we should all be concerned about it, because a search engine that can be censored is really of no use to any of us, unless you're looking for funny cat videos. But Apparently, they're working on a batch of code that is associated with the China search engine, according to 3 Google sources. The development has stoked anger inside Google offices, where many of the company's 88,000 workforce previously protested against plans to launch the search engine, which was designed to censor broad categories of information associated with human rights, democracy, religion, and peaceful protest. So Google's apparently still doing it because, hey, a buck is a buck, or in this case, a yuan is a yuan. Now, here's a story. Take this one with a grain of salt. It's coming from CNET. And according to this story, the National Security Agency has discontinued that phone data collection programming. And apparently, Luke Murray, National Security Advisor for House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy, basically came out and said the NSA hasn't used the system in months, and Trump doesn't look like he's going to seek to renew its legal authority. Well, the NSA never stood much on legality. And if they are, in fact, shutting it down, I mean, this is the system that saved all the metadata. Where you were, who you were calling, how long you were on the line. But we don't really know what the NSA is recording. They could be recording the voices as well. We know the advertising agencies are. But if the NSA really has abandoned this system, it's probably because it was simply too much data. And when they first started up with this whole idea of, well, we're going to collect it all, you know, if we want to find that needle in a haystack, we got to get more hay in there. And I pointed out that adding data to a database is linear, but correlation among that data is an unlimited expansion. And I'm going to take a guess here, especially since the NSA has never come on out and said, oh, looky, we caught ourselves a terrorist. I think the system ultimately didn't work. Another huge waste of time and energy and money. Alrighty. Researchers have discovered a new flaw affecting all Intel computer chips due to the way they carry out speculative execution for CPU performance gains. Now, this new one is called Spoiler, and like the Spectre and Meltdown attacks revealed in January of last year, it abuses speculative execution to leak secrets. Now, for those of you who don't spend a lot of time looking at computer chips, speculative execution is additional processors on the CPU that try and take a guess as to what the next instruction will be and beat the CPU to it, to have it sort of like ready to go. And it's basically to speed up the computer and manage the memory order buffer and the cache. But apparently this bug is going to be hard to find. It's going to be hard to get rid of. And of course, every time they shut down the speculative execution, the chips slow way, way down. I think it's time that somebody starts seriously looking at photonics, at CPUs that run on light. So they'll be blazingly fast, much faster than silicon, and we won't have to make them so complicated so that criminals can find ways in. We can go back to very simple chip designs. Just go out to the memory, get the data, do the process on it, put the data back. All right, SpaceX's Crew Dragon had its test flight on the Falcon 9 rocket, and of course this marks the return of America's ability to fly up to the space station without hitching a ride with those gosh darn Russians here. And they took up it was a resupply mission, no human crew, but there was a stuffed toy, a doll that they called Ripley, a female mannequin. No humans were on board for the test flight, and they're planning this summer to have a flight with a human crew. Go get them, SpaceX. This is so exciting to watch here. Up on Mars at the InSight lander, they've started digging into the surface using what's called the mole. And Apparently, Insight's heat flow and physical properties package instrument burrowed underground for the first time back on the 28th of February. And after 400 hammer blows over the course of 4 hours, the instrument apparently got between 7 inches and 19 inches. They're not really sure beneath the red dirt, but there were obstacles. And they think maybe it's hit a stone. The stone is about 15 degrees, and they think maybe that they have been able to push it aside or get past it. So on the Viking, we had a scoop arm, but we never went that deep with it. Every time we talk about Planned Parenthood and we talk about, aborted baby parts, I keep wondering, who would buy such a thing? Well, I found one. Apparently, the Department of Health and Human Services says it has granted a second 90-day extension to a contract it has with the University of California at San Francisco that requires UCSF to make what are called humanized mice. And these creatures are made by implanting mice with human tissues taken from late-term aborted babies. So that's apparently one thing that they're doing. And basically, it's creating a demand driven by federal tax dollars for tissue taken from late-term aborted babies. And according to an estimate that's published on its website, the National Institutes of Health, which is a division of the Department of Health and Human Services, will spend $95 million this fiscal year alone on research that, like UCSF's humanized mouse contract, uses human fetal tissue. So they're experimenting on that. Okay. Back in 2002, the Netherlands, pardon me, was the first country in the world to legalize euthanasia, meaning medically assisted suicide. And today they're still considered pioneers. They keep pushing the boundaries wider and wider. And euthanasia is becoming very common over there. In 2017, the last year for which figures are available, doctors reported administering lethal injections to 6,585 patients. Now, euthanasia has become so normalized that there is now a plan to change the law, saying that the current law says people have to have unbearable suffering and a non-curable disease with no prospect of improvement. Well, now they're trying to say, well, it might be okay for elderly patients who are suffering an accumulation of old age complaints rather than an actual terminal illness. In other words, they're saying, yeah, if you just get tired of living, the doctor will see you now. All right. Since 1980, the American Association for the Advancement of Science, which is the world's largest scientific society and publisher, several journals, including Science, they present an annual award for scientific freedom and responsibility to scientists, engineers, or their organizations whose exemplary actions have demonstrated scientific freedom and responsibility in challenging circumstances. Okay? So sounds like it's a really nice award to get. Well, apparently, they ran into a little bit of a snag because there were 2 human health researchers who received this award this year. And they got the award for publishing papers linking glyphosate exposure to chronic kidney disease of unknown etiology in Sri Lankan farmers. And apparently Monsanto got their knickers in a twist, and they brought pressure to bear on the AAAS to the point where the award was retracted. And that's a real bad sign when real science is subordinate to corporate interest. Okay. Another article, this one came out of Waking Times here. There's been a new research program that confirms, once again, all these measles outbreaks that we are hearing all across the country. Oh, it's an epidemic, get your shots. They're transmitted by the vaccinated. And so lawmakers are getting ready to maybe say, there needs to be a little more flexibility in the vaccination laws. Unfortunately, head of the FDA is out there saying, no, everybody has to get a shot here. And we've known this for a while here with those attenuated pathogen vaccines here. Over in cervical cancer world, apparently the HPV vaccine has been linked to growing rates of infertility in both men and women. Now, fertility rates are plummeting at an unprecedented pace around the world. In the United States, birth rates just reached a 30-year low. And in Finland, birth rates just reached the lowest they've been in 150 years. So across the board, the majority of developed nations in the world are now facing falling fertility rates. And apparently, a scientific study has linked the HPV vaccine, which is being shoved at everybody, to the rise of infertility. We're under chemical assault here. I mean, if that gene gets out, the one that makes you sterile, if that breaks into the wild, that could be a real problem. There could be other medicines and that we're being given that impair our abilities to reproduce. Too many of these products are put out there in the market without really knowing what they're going to do. And then, 5 or 10 years down the road, oh my goodness, this was a real problem. We're sorry about it. We'll set aside a little legal fund for the survivors. And I miss the days when healthcare was about health. All right, we're coming up here on another commercial break. I see we've got a caller on the line that we're going to get to when we come back from these words from our sponsors. So everybody take a deep breath, and we'll be right back with the rest of our radio show. Aloha America, welcome back to our show here. Let's take a phone call from David in San Francisco. Aloha, David. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Oh, Michael. Hey, I heard you talking about vaccinations, and I take it, is this actual pending legislation?
It's apparently it's at the stage of discussions. But, there are a lot of people who are saying, we have to have the right to opt out. And, I mean, this product is just being forced on us. It's proving to be ineffective. It's proving in many cases to be actually harmful. But it's all about, taking money out of our pockets and giving it to wealthy corporations who then in turn will share it with campaigning politicians.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I'm pretty much of a naturopath. I believe, if it's like, what is it, the herbs and the plants of the earth will cure your disease or something like that. It's an old biblical reference. Yeah, we're natural critters, and it shouldn't be too complicated. But actually, what's complicating it is pollution. And
yes.
Like a governmental agency will give a corporation the license to poison the river. Either that or the corporation will simply poison the river and not tell anybody. And so everybody downstream can't live a natural life anymore because the water is poisoned or chemically altered so that
yes.
everybody's gene pool is damaged. So what I'd like to see is, the kind of a network of county extension agents and county health departments. The idea of monitoring cancer clusters, letting people know that there is a cancer cluster would be a good start.
Yeah, it's very hard to get that information. I was surprised because some years ago I was involved in a discussion about whether the certain radio transmitters were causing cancer. I couldn't actually find a high-resolution cancer map. I found one that was divided to in 3 sections. And apparently it's a big secret where the cancer clusters are, because I guess you might figure out what's causing the cancer and decide you don't want to live there.
It's funny. Somebody lent me, I'm trying to think of what they call it, not BODs. There's some kind of an electronic gizmo that you can test for electronic fields.
Yes.
I think even like private eyes, if they go into a room, they can tell where a bug is by aiming stuff at the wall, right?
Yep.
So you can do. One time somebody lent me theirs, and I climbed on a city bus down here in San Francisco, and I rode it like all the way downtown, and that thing was going, just carrying on like crazy in various spots, and it didn't make sense, some of the spots, but as I understand it, there are big, like we've got the electric train, so they probably have the major motors or the power grid is
that's probably exactly,
yeah.
That's probably exactly what's going on. You do have to be careful with those meters. Very often you're getting readings from perfectly benign sources. And, but yeah, anyway, anything else?
Well, I guess the biggest thing was you were talking about if it's pending legislation, so would that be Trump and his buddies trying to create that? See, they want to deregulate, right? And I contend that the polluters are responsible for our health problems.
Yes.
If we're natural critters, we should be able to live pretty easy. But if there are people that are intentionally poisoning the water, the soil, the food, they're cheapening the quality of the nutrition, then we're given rays and all sorts of different, 24-hour-a-day electronic fields. It's obvious that, the natural man can't make it anymore.
Well, that's by design.
It's much more difficult.
That's by design. The government wants us dependent on them to keep us under control. Corporations want us dependent on them for the basic life's necessities. They absolutely detest anybody being able to walk outside their own home and pick something off of a plant in a garden or get water from a well. They want it all to be commoditized. They think that you should not be allowed to live unless you're constantly pouring money into the corporations.
Sure. That's one of the reasons why I like that old, there was a law of Moses called Jubilee, where every few years you just cancel out the debts. And I ran into a book called Who Tampered with the Bible? And it talks about the various politics that got into various eras, and various people tried to, write that out of the Bible to make sure that, the merchants could still loot the temple. And so this Jubilee was, I took it like if you had a Katrina, it wiped out a whole region, you got to cancel all the debts. All those mortgages got to go back to zero. Everybody's got to start over, and to have a mortgage hanging over your head while you're trying to start from zero is like a death sentence. It's twice as much burden to survive.
Yep.
And so Jubilee was based on that, where you have a natural disaster, an act of God. So the money doesn't mean anything after an act of God. And so the politicians said that should be every 50 years, but we've never seen one yet.
Oh, no, that stopped during ancient Rome, and as a matter of fact, Rome collapsed from its debt immediately after that. David, got to let you go. Got to take a break for a commercial. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. We're talking about vaccines. We're talking about the HPV vaccines. And HPV vaccine injuries are not rare. In fact, neither are vaccine injuries in general. The National Childhood Vaccine Injury Act, basically to date, that vaccine court has paid $4 billion, that's with a B, to families with vaccine injured children. And even they're saying they're not getting them all, that this is just 1%, because most time parents don't recognize vaccine injury for what it is. Okay, we're going to take a phone call from Mark in Montana. Aloha, Mark. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Howdy, Michael. I wanted to kind of weigh in on this because my mother, she was kind of a weird, a member of a weird Jewish sect, and so she'd never vaccinated any of us. And I'm 51. I've never had the flu. I did have chickenpox and measles when I was a kid. I think everybody my age has.
Yes.
But Mom wasn't even sure if I had measles. She just said I got a couple of little specks. So she thinks it was measles, but she's not sure. To this date, I've never had it. And, as I've mentioned in the past, I work in the oil field, so I'm around people from all over the world, from third world countries, from, places like Indonesia. When I was on the North Slope of Alaska, we had hot bunks. I don't know if you know what that is.
Yeah, I know what that is.
Basically, you work 12-hour shifts. Yeah, you get up and somebody flops down behind you in the bunk, you know. And the guy that was my bunk buddy, the guy that I never met him because you worked, you know, opposite shifts, you never passed each other. But the guy that was in there came up with a disease like chickamauga, and he was from Indonesia or somewhere. And they quarantined. He ended up dying. They quarantined me for, gosh, I think they had me probably 7 days in a room by myself.
Yeah.
And I never came down with it. They said they don't know how that happened, and I said because I played in cow doo-doo when I was a kid, like all the other farm kids. You know, you get out, you get exposed to things when you're a child, and when you become an adult, your immune system's developed. Like I said, I've never even had the flu, nothing. I mean, the worst thing I've ever had is, you know, a case of bad burrito-itis out here in West Texas. That's it.
Well, you know, when you get mumps or measles the natural way as a child, you do get a lifetime immunity from it. You'll never get it again.
Right.
Same thing with mumps. What they're discovering now is that the measles vaccine only gives you temporary immunity, if it even does that. So it's again.
Right, and we're not talking, you know, an aerosol version of AIDS or anything. It's the measles. It's chicken pox. Everybody my age got both diseases. And it's uncomfortable. You get a little rash. You itch a little bit. You may end up, if you scratch too much, you end up with some scars. But in general, you're not going to die from it unless you're really severely immunocompromised. But, you know, and one of my poker buddies, he's a doctor, and he says we give way too many vaccines. He said the only real clean vaccine out there is a tetanus vaccine.
Yes.
The rest of them are full of crap.
Yep.
So I just thought I'd throw my 2 cents in there. I know I'm just an oil field worker, but that's my personal experience. My brothers were never vaccinated either, and they've got about the same, you know, immune system that I've got. Yep. We don't catch stuff.
Yep.
So there you go.
All right. Well, thank you for the phone call. Thank you for the insights. And yeah, it seems for all of these needles that we are sticking into each other, we're actually becoming chronically sicker as a society. And that should be telling us something there. All right, the United Nations is out there screaming about the new global measles outbreak, and they're talking about it. It's spread to terrifying new levels around the globe last year, has triggered a warning from the United Nations. Vaccinate your children. They're out there pushing the product, as it were. Okay. I was just noticing on Fox, they're running a story accusing China of trying to hack into university computers engaged in military research. I have no doubt hackers are trying to do that. Our hackers, their hackers, this guy's hackers, that guy's hacker. They can't possibly know it's China. Any hacker worth their salt knows how to basically lay a false trail. There's no mechanism built in to the internet to actually forward the genuine IP of that end terminal. It's just not there. Should have been. Would have been a really good idea. Story coming out of Reuters. Kremlin says cyber attacks on Russia often launched from U.S. territory, and basically was unable to confirm a U.S. media report that the U.S. military had disrupted the internet access of a Russian troll farm. Everybody's playing with everybody else's machines here. Okay, the latest new must-have, forced-to-have gizmo for your car is going to be basically a sobriety test. And this article is talking about future cars will judge whether or not you are fit to drive. If you're sleepy, stressed, you've had too much to drink, your car is going to say no. The problem I have with that, what happens if you're dealing with a crisis situation? What happens if, you know, there's an emergency? Let's say you've had a couple of drinks, you're not a danger on the road, and somebody in your family needs to be taken to the emergency room. And let's say that the ambulances are all already out on runs. That would be a situation in which you have to say, I have to get behind the wheel, and the car's got to get me down to the emergency room. I think on a general scale, I'm becoming very uncomfortable at electronics that try and take care of you for you. Because, well, I like to make up my own mind about a lot of things. Anyway, if you own a Ring doorbell camera system, apparently there has been a problem with people using that built-in camera to spy on customers. And this is a company that is owned by Amazon. And apparently, all that's apparently required to tap into the live feeds is a customer's email address. Apparently, the security on the setup isn't all that good. And that means that criminals can watch when you're coming and when you're going. They know when you leave your house, so they can come on over and help themselves to your stuff. Not thinking these things all the way through here. All right, the next big thing for the iPhone, I guess this is going to be for the iPhone 11, is they're going to put one of these 3D cameras on the rear of the phone. On the iPhone 10, it's on the front because it does the facial recognition. But apparently they've decided they're going to put one on the back of the phone so that as you swing the phone around, it will try and tell you who's standing in front of you. Okay. All right. A UN human rights expert has published a draft list of questions to measure countries' privacy safeguards. This is a first step toward ranking the governments that are potentially doing the most snooping on their own citizens. This is coming from Joseph Kanataki. The UN Special Rapporteur on the Right to Privacy submitted the draft questionnaire touching on everything from chat rooms to systematic surveillance to the UN Human Rights Council and invited comments, I guess, toward the middle of the year. And he's apparently been investigating privacy since 2015, especially after Edward Snowden's revelations about U.S. surveillance. Okay. Oh, we have some more human-caused global warming. I had this out of the area. Largest snowstorm this season has begun in New York City. And extremely cold temps into Monday morning. Well, it's already Tuesday here. Some of the stuff is a little outdated. Apparently, it's snowed in Baltimore, and they're dealing with that there. And we already talked about the tornado outbreaks in Alabama. Apparently, they also had tornadoes in Georgia. And I guess that 23 fatalities is now a firm number. Over in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, there is a growing problem in that these clinics that are being set up to deal with the Ebola outbreak are being set on fire. Arsonists are burning them. Apparently, the locals don't trust the medical personnel, and so they've burned 2 of them now. And Ebola's been around there for 7 months. It's claimed 548 lives, and they're saying it's still not under control. All right, we're going to take a phone call here. Thomas in Florida. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah. Hello.
Hello.
Yes, I wanted to make a comment about your vaccinations that were being spoken about just a little while ago.
Yes.
Many years ago, my oldest son now is almost 30, and I happened across a book by a doctor. He was a pediatrician. His name was Dr. Robert Mendelsohn, and he's deceased as of now. He died a long time ago, actually. Yeah. But he wrote some wonderful books. And one of the books that we got was called How to Raise a Healthy Child in Spite of Your Doctor. And he wrote it in 1987. And even then, he said, you don't need vaccinations. He talked about all the various things that they try to freak out about, like measles, mumps, chicken pox. He gave the statistics of what damage could possibly happen
Yes.
if your child did actually get them. And he basically debunked everything. In fact, we never even had a pediatrician for any of our children, and we never vaccinated them, simply because of what we read. So anyone who has grandchildren or children, they should look him up. He was way ahead of his time.
Yes.
He wrote another book in 1988, and the book was called "But Doctor, About That Shot," and then it says the risks of immunization and how to avoid them. This is way before they started actually poisoning the shots with all the additional stuff today.
Yes.
So he was he was a wonderful man. I have a friend who actually met him before he died. She was she used to do home births, and she was, quite accomplished. She had thousands of births under her belt, and she met with Dr. Mendelsohn. And there's absolutely no reason to be vaccinating your children, none at all, and it just causes harm.
Yeah, well,
So
but it makes money, and that's why they're ordering everybody to do it. And it really is.
And the thing is, if people just remember that and write it down, because if they have any people that are having children, it puts your mind at ease. We started off sort of with a pediatrician, and one of my oldest boy got this thing called roseola. And the reason we were able to diagnose it is we went into Mendelssohn's book. It was like our Bible.
Yes.
And honest to goodness, we called them up and we said, and I described the symptoms, and I kind of said, well, and I know the prognosis is just basically this. It's not going to be serious. And I remember the pediatricians basically said, well, you can bring him in if you want to. It was sort of like, we just, that would have been an expensive pediatrician office visit. And
Yes.
it was to no use, because he basically passed right through it like Mendelssohn said. He says, there's no problem with that. Babies get it. And he was so wonderful. It was like having a grandparent with knowledge,
Yes.
It's just a wonderful thing, and I recommend anybody get that book to put their mind at ease and to raise their children properly and without doing anything unnecessary or even harmful.
Okay. Somebody just sent me the link to the book over at Amazon, How to Raise a Healthy Child in Spite of Your Doctor. I'll put that up a little bit later. Anyway, Thomas, thank you very much for the phone call. We're going to let you go.
Oh, okay. Could I say one more thing?
Yeah,
one more thing.
One more thing.
You mentioned something about this thing that just passed in the House about this, universal gun registration, and I agree with a lot of what you say, but I kind of took, offense. I think what you said. Oh, maybe it might be a good thing. It's actually not a good thing, because anyone who ever did anything with a weapon, they got them illegally. They stole them. There's no way to control it. And Americans have always been able to, on a personal level, be able to buy and sell firearms amongst themselves. And I think if once you take that away, that's going to lead to basically they're going to know everyone who's got a gun eventually. As the years go by, all these things will be registered, and that's when they come and they take them away from you.
Well, I know there is that issue about gun confiscation, and I know that there's a lot of Democrats who want to just flat out confiscate the guns and get it over with. But again, the problem with the system that they already have is it didn't work. In the case of that shooting where this guy was let go from his job and he just had the gun with him and he uncorked on his co-workers, he wasn't supposed to have the gun.
The problem is they'll develop a list. They'll develop a list for all us innocent people who've been doing it forever amongst ourselves. And then, this is the thin end of the wedge, That's what I say.
Well, I know it's a contentious issue.
It is.
Okay. So, Thomas, we're going to let you go. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you.
And I've got a message from Mike in the control room. Tom in Utah recommends the National Vaccine Information Center as a resource where people can find out more. And it's terrible to live in a country where you're being forced to buy products that you don't want and may not even be good for you. But it's all about just cranking out that money from your pocket and into the pockets of Big Pharma. Okay, over at CBS, they were interviewing somebody from the FDA, and they literally asked point blank if the FDA ignited the opioid crisis, and this executive said, yeah, actually, we did. And the guest was Ed Thompson. He was a drug manufacturer who spent decades managing and producing opioids for Big Pharma, and he basically was going public to say, you know, this is not a good thing. All right, let's go back up here. And we should be hitting a commercial break right about now. Aloha America, welcome back to our show, last segment of our program today, and we're going to do a couple of science stories. This one is coming out of Science Alert, and it's basically talking about how Mars, they're starting to get evidence of a planet-wide groundwater system. Now, we know there's very little water on the surface of Mars. I mean, little microscopic amounts have been seen. There have been flows of water seen from the orbiters, but it looks like there may be a lot more water than previously thought, and it's all basically underground. And, of course, my theory is, I mean, you can look at the evidence on Mars. It used to be a watery world. There's no question about that. I think it suffered a major collision over at the Utopian Plain that literally splashed the atmosphere away from the planet and allowed the above-ground water to basically boil off here. Here's a very interesting article. This is over in TechCrunch. And apparently, researchers from the University of Science and Technology in China are experimenting with these injectable light-tweaking nanoparticles. And by injecting these nanoparticles into a mouse's retina, the mouse is suddenly and clearly able to perceive near-infrared light, something that it previously could not do. And I can already see the Pentagon making plans for this technology. You know, soldiers with built-in night vision. Okay. And once again, we are seeing just all of these accusations against priests for all of the sexual misbehavior, for lack of a better word. And it's kind of hard to imagine people still being faithful, if you will, to the Catholic Church when so much has come on out. And apparently there have been something like 400 priests and others associated with the church just in New York State. And apparently there is another wave of accusations about to be unleashed. More than 1,260 sexual abuse claims have been resolved, and at least $228 million paid out in compensation over the last 2 years under a systematic reconciliation program adopted by New York's 8 Catholic dioceses. And I think it's great that the victims are getting compensated, but what are you doing to stop the problem? Because it is a problem, and it has been for decades. It may have been a problem going all the way back to the beginning of the church. But you can't claim to represent the supreme morality of a divine being and behave like that. It just doesn't work. Alrighty, so we're coming up here on the end of the show, and this time I'm going to remember John Stadmiller's name. Talk about a memory problem there with that one. So stay tuned for John Stadmiller's program. He's got a lot of things to share with you. Please take what you learn here and at the website, share it with everybody that you know. And please donate to Republic Broadcasting. Please donate to What Really Happened. We'll be back tomorrow. Aloha, America.